Okay, so in this video I'm going to show you the basic strokes for copperplate calligraphy. So you'll see them here in the workbook. So there's the downstroke, there's the looped downstroke, upward curve, downward curve, compound curve, which is your upward curve and your downward curve knit together, the oval, small upstroke, downward loop and the upward loop. And if you're getting some good habits with the basic strokes, when they come together to form the letters, you will already have some good muscle memory there that will help you get your letter formations more accurate from the off. So the way the pointed nib works is pressure and release. So when you press down, the tines of the nib split, you get a wide channel for the ink to flow through, and that creates a thick line. When the tines are together, there's a thinner channel for the ink to flow through, so that creates a thin line. So as you're writing, you are putting pressure on the downstroke and lifting that pressure on the upstroke. So as you're writing, your nib is going pressure, release, pressure, release. So when you dip your ink, don't need to dunk the whole nib in, just needs to pool quite nicely on the underside of the nib there up to the air vent. So if you just begin by doing a light pressure stroke from the top of the X height, the top of the ascender to the bottom of the X height, and then you can apply a little bit more pressure and just see how thick you can get those lines. Have a little play around with the nib first of all. Of course, if you apply too much pressure, that's when the tines split and you get that tram line. So you want to avoid pressing down too hard. It really just needs to be a little bit of pressure so that you get that contrast between thick and thin. So then, just to get you into the habit of pressure on the downstroke and releasing it on the upstroke, just do some downward strokes with pressure, some upward strokes with no pressure. And that is basically how the pen works, or the nib works. So your loop downstroke, you have pressure coming down from the top of the ascender, lifting it as you start to curve around as you meet the bottom of the X height there. So it kind of looks like an umbrella handle. Pressure coming down, lifting it at about that point there, curving round. The upward curve is just contained within the X height. So no pressure as you're coming up, and then putting that pressure on as you curve and start to move down. So again, not on the line, just below the line, start applying that pressure. Your downward curve is the reverse of that. So top of the X height, lifting the pressure as you get to the bottom. No pressure as you're coming up again. And what you're looking for is a nice oval shape. So you don't want to do something that's too round and too wide. Keep those strokes quite parallel and quite close to each other, as if you're drawing them around an oval shape. The compound curve is these two strokes together. So no pressure as you go up, pressure as you're coming down, lifting it again as you start to curve and come back up. And you'll see I'm following the diagonal strokes here as well to keep them on a nice slant. So again, just looking for even space here, not doing one wider than the other. The oval, So if you can imagine you've got a clock face, if you want to start at 2 o'clock, you come up, round, pressure on the left hand side there, lifting it again as you start to curve round. And again, this one is just contained in the X height. And the reason you started just below the top of the X height there is to give the nib time to go from being together to being apart to the tines coming together again. And then your upstroke, it could be a short upstroke. These are generally going to be your leading strokes to letters or your joining strokes. Some of them might be a little higher, so some might go from the bottom to the top of the X height. Really just depends on the letter that you're doing. And then the loop, which are my favourite strokes, so you've got your downward loop, pressure coming down into the descender, lifting it as you come round, and then you've got no pressure as you're doing that swirl back up to the top of the X height. And then the next one, the last one, is the upward loop. And this one, it's important to remember that little kink as you go up. So you go from the bottom of the X height to the top of the X height with no pressure, bottom of the ascender to the top of the ascender with no pressure, looping it round, pressure as you come down, and that is your upward loop. And the reason for that little kink is you'll see there the loops all start in the same place. So again, it's just that uniformity that you get with the traditional styles of calligraphy. So you want your loops, regardless of which letter you're doing, to be starting in the same place. So don't forget the kink. And those are your basic strokes. Okay, so I'm going to show you the first group of letters. So these are letters that start with a downstroke or a downward curve. So there's the I. So again, your worksheets will have the basic strokes next to the letter to show you how they're knitted together to form the letter. So for the I, you've got leading stroke with no pressure, and then the downward curve, where you've got the pressure on the left hand side as you're coming down to form the I, and then you just dot it at the top. So again, just within the X height and keeping that oval shape. The J, light leading stroke, and then your downward loop. So again, pressure coming down. You always apply the pressure on the downstroke. Now with the T, you can do the leading stroke, downward loop. It's not quite to the top of the ascender. T's are always shorter letters. If you wanted to, you can come all the way up and then do your downstroke, because I find that's easier when you're writing a word, because that doesn't interrupt the flow so much. And then you have a U, so leading stroke, downward curve, and then following that line back down for the U. So it's kind of two downward curves together. And then the V is the I stroke really, and then your little dot and a lead out stroke. Lead in, downward curve with the pressure as you come down, little kind of full stop, and then a lead out stroke on the right hand side. For the W, you're just adding another curve. So leading stroke, downward curve, little dot, lead out stroke. And then finally the Y, lead in stroke, and you've got that I stroke again, and then you're coming down for the tail of the Y, you're doing a downward loop. So again, the pressure is on the downstroke. So no pressure going up, pressure coming down, lifting it as you come round, pressure coming down again, lifting it as you round the tail of the Y. Okay, so the next group of letters start with or contain an upward curve. So you start with your M. So no pressure as you come up, pressure as you come down. Follow that line back up with no pressure. Pressure as you come down. No pressure going back up, and then the M ends with that compound curve. So you've got upward curve, compound curve. So it looks like quite a wide letter. And then the N is the same, but it's just one upward curve. So one upward curve, and then your downward curve for your N. So again, it's just within the X height, and you are following the diagonal guide as well, so it's got a slope to it. And then there's the P. So leading stroke. P is a little unusual because it's just got a straight line going from the top of the X height to the bottom of the descender, and then you can follow that back up, and then there's your compound curve for the P. And you'll notice it's an open bold P, which will feel quite strange because you're used to kind of closing that bowl of the P. But with Copperplate it just stays open. And then the other two letters are your R and your S, which don't really fall into any particular family group, but they're very similar themselves. So long sweeping upstroke, and then a little dot and a little scalloped edge if you like, and then your downward curve for the R. So again, that is a very old-fashioned traditional cursive R, as is the S. So same starting point, and then just give it a little curve as you come down. So you're obviously not coming down straight, but you're not coming out too rounded either. So as you come in, just apply a little bit of pressure, releasing it again as you get to the bottom of the X height, and then your lead out stroke ready for the next letter. Okay, the next group of letters are letters that start with an upward loop. My personal favourites, I must admit, are amongst this group here. So don't forget, the upward loop is the one that's got that little kink in it. So there is your B. So no pressure from the bottom to the top of the X height, no pressure from the bottom to the top of the ascender. Pressure as you come down, following that diagonal guideline. No pressure as you come back up, little dot, and then a lead out stroke. So there is your B. Now the F, again, upward loop, and then it kind of turns into the downward loop as well. So you're going all the way from the top of the ascender to the bottom of the descender with this one. So as you're applying the pressure, just keep that pressure nice and steady as you go from the very top to the very bottom. So releasing that pressure as you get to the bottom of the descender, and then out for the cross stroke of the F. The H is your upward loop and the compound curve. So again, just making sure that you're not coming too far out, that you're keeping the letters nice and slim and rectangular. There's your K, upward loop, pressure coming down. There's a couple of ways you can do the K. You can bring that back up, loop it and do the kick out, slight pressure as you're coming down there. So that's all in one movement. Or you can take the pen off for the kick of the K, keep it open, so do a little dot and do a more open K. And then finally the L, which is really just the first part of the B stroke. So upward loop, pressure coming down, lifting off. Okay, so the next group of letters are based on the oval. So from your basic strokes, it is this one. So if you remember, we were starting at 2 o'clock and coming round. If you don't get the perfect join, don't worry, because these letters are generally covered. They'll cover over any little missteps that you make there. So the A, leading stroke, and then don't be tempted to keep going. You lift the pen off, do the oval separately, and then come up, downward curve for the stem of the A there. So no pressure, lift the pen off, oval shape, pressure as you come down on the left hand side, and then pressure as you come down again. C, leading stroke, again like the oval, but you're not closing the oval because you will be coming onto the next letter there. So you don't close the oval, you'll continue out for your lead out stroke. The D, same beginning as the A, and then you'll come up, right to the top of the ascender, back down again with the pressure, and then lifting off as you curve round. So it's your oval all the way to the top, and then your downward loop for the stem of the D. G, again beginning with that leading stroke, the oval like the A, but then coming down at the descender to form the tail of the G. Keeping to that diagonal stroke as well. The O, leading stroke, the oval, and when you join them, little dot and lead out. So you'll see that ties in with the V and the W. And actually, if you wanted to go back, you can add a little dot to the beginning of these C's as well. And then finally the Q. So again, it's that A stroke, coming down, and then the loop is on the right hand side. And obviously that would be followed by a U, so I'll show you how to do the Q into the U. Okay, so this letter group, E, X and Z, they don't particularly fit into any of the other family groups. The E is similar to the L, it's almost like a compressed version of the L, it just sits in the X height. So you still have that upward loop kind of movement, and do the kink kind of halfway up the X height so that you can keep the balls or the loop of the E pretty consistent. So no pressure, little kink in the middle, and then the pressure as you're coming round. The X, you can do almost like sort of back-to-back C's. So no pressure as you curve and pressure in the middle, lifting it off again. Coming back, pressure in the middle, lifting it off again. You can also do it like that, more traditional, recognisable X, I guess, with the pressure down and across. So this is what I tend to use at the start of a word, but then in the middle of a word I might use this just so it doesn't interrupt the flow. And then the Z, again, you can kind of come round, it's almost like a number 3. So just a little bit of pressure, pressure as you curve round, pressure as you come down again, looping it. And I guess if you want to do a bit more of a modern version, I just do that, something similar to that. But again, start of a word, I would go for that Z. If you were doing a Z that was in the middle of a word, the likelihood is it would just look a bit more like that, because you'd be coming in from a previous letter, leading out to the next one. Okay, so the Copperplate capitals are a little bit more flexible. You'll be able to find loads of different examples online of plain capitals, more flourished capitals, more modern styles. You can go back and look at historic examples in kind of old penmanship books and things. So I'm just going to run through, I guess that we have just my go-to capital letters, if you like. And again, the principles are exactly the same, just pressure on the downstroke. So the A, for example, just loop it so there's no pressure. Most of the capitals will be in the ascender in the X height as well. So that is generally how I do an A. And you've got your B, so a few of these capitals will have that nice sloped stem to work from. And there's C, D, the E, and the F again with that lovely slope. G, and the H, the I, J will come down into the descender. K, L, and the M, N, O, again has that nice slope. Q, a bit more important to get the join right on the Q. Yeah. S. T. U. V. W. X. Y. And Z.